These Ojibwe Indians have found a way to win the power and money game. They've paid a price. Some say it was too heavy a price. Others may follow a different road, but this is their road and their story. They're the people of Dokis band on the French River. This wide stretch of Canadian Shield bushland is their home. Through all their history, the people of Dokis have worked and planned to balance the market in the city against the peaceful life of the bush.
We've never had to go after anything, swinging tomahawks or anything to get anything done around here. We went at it quietly, and we've got our rewards from it. We've got most things that we've asked for. You make a life of your own here, I guess. More or less choose what you'd like to do. If you want to guide for half of the season, you guide for half of the season. You want to go working as a carpenter up the lake, or some of the people choose to go out, work in the cities. Myself, I like to work here. I like to make my own type of life. The hunting and fishing, it seems you're free.
We don't like TV, we don't like anything. We like in the bush.
We went to see a trap yesterday, and he caught one great big beaver. That's what we had last night. We got one project, and we got muskrat, to eat. That's why we like to stay here, and, we don't have to buy anything.
The strategy of the people of Dokis has always been simple and effective. Retreat to an isolated base and adjust to the world at their own speed. This meant shutting out the white man's world until they were ready to handle it. They refused to have a school built on the reserve, and in the 19th century, their chiefs refused to let white people stay overnight. Their policy was to control the flow of people and ideas between the reserve and the cities. The eagle on the Dokis flag symbolizes their control and their freedom.
Mr. Dokis didn't want the boat stay overnight when we used to bring the groceries in, because he knew what would happen to his great-grandfather when the white men first got in Canada, that they brought the moonshine and set those men drunk, and then they took the woman with them.
This Dokis band, they were very, very hard chief. Old Frank Dokis. I remember him, or Mr. Coburn asking why you don't want a schoolhouse to learn your children, grandchildren to write and understand everything in English. No, he says, I don't want it. That's where all the Indians going to learn to steal and rob somebody. That's what he did.
The River runs down from Lake Nipissing to Georgian Bay in a stairway of long, narrow lakes connected by falls and rapids. The history of Dokis Band has been like the river, a chain of calm waters joined by stretches of trouble. The life of the Ojibwe, Nipissing, and Ottawa Indians was shaped by the fur trade. The Dokis people and other northern Algonquians became trappers, canoemen, and seasonal laborers. But for the Dokis people, there was a difference. They had a tradition of barter trade inherited from the old days, when they used to travel back and forth between the swamps and waterways of the north and the Huron cornfields of the south. Now they moved into the fur trade as independent merchants under the guidance of a strong chief who maintained a canoe trading network. This was their first tactic for surviving the stormy times that followed the European invasion. Dokis ancestors had trading posts where they kept this account book, partly in picture language, partly in Ojibwe script learned from Catholic missionaries. In 1850, Dokis Band and the other Indians of the region signed the Robinson-Huron Treaty, by which they gave up thousands of square miles in exchange for a little cash and a lot of solemn promises.
I met the men of the Dokis Band at the home of their chief. They showed a decided independence of character and action.
The government put heavy pressure on Indian bands to sell what they had left after treaty, their reserve lands and timber. Some bands broke into quarreling factions and sold a lot of land and timber for giveaway prices. This happened at Nipissing across the lake from Dokis. The result is down there, the long, narrow strip of reserved land crisscrossed with roads and railways and pipelines. The people of Dokis never made that mistake. They kept going as long as they could as canoe fur traders, but they didn't wait for the advancing network of roads and railways to entangle them. They retreated to their home reserve on the French River, beyond the last road, where they lived by hunting, farming, and wage work in logging camps. They led a special kind of life in the bush, learning the ways of the invading whites without giving up their independence.
I remember before we had a radio, we make parties, see, we dance, and all that, have a little bit of fun. Then maybe another time, somebody else will make another little party.
I think the people are very, very close, even closer than we realize ourselves. Out in the city, it's not too often the other guy's going to stop and offer help. Whereas here, there's somebody in trouble, we're all in there helping them.
Because of their togetherness, Dokis people were able to resist demands to sell out. This was another survival tactic at Dokis Bay. Keep your distance until you're ready to deal.
Settlers and lumbermen are surrounding their reserve, thereby endangering the loss of their pine by fire, and yet they refuse to allow their timber to be sold because their chief promised Mr. Robinson that as long as he lived, they would never surrender it to the Crown.
At last, in 1909, the time came when they were ready to sell part of their timber.
The Dokis Indians surrendered the pine timber on the reserve last winter, and the department had it sold by auction in Ottawa, realizing a very large sum of money.
When all returns were in, the 80 members of Dokis Band had more than $1 million in a trust fund in Ottawa. The federal government kept a careful guard on the money. Every family drew an allowance. The band was rich, but a lot of individual people were still poor.
The time I remember, it's not as easy as it is now. There's people living there. They got their roads and the way to come out. And the time when I was small, I had to come out by horses in the winter or dog team. And in the summertime, you had to come out by boat. Because after all my brothers were married, I had to do it myself, me and my sister, to go and cut wood in the bush. Use the crosscut saw, and then use the dogs to bring down the wood. And then in the winter time, I had to make hole in the ice
The people of Dokis followed their own timetable in deciding when they were ready to accept schools.
In my days, there was no school here. That school was built, I'm not very sure, I think it's 26. You know, where the hall now today.
You have a bicycle. You have a bicycle. I go right up this street.
The first schools were not much help. School was a stop-and-start experience. Teachers from the city couldn't stand life in the bush. Some stayed only a month. Some stayed until Christmas before they got homesick and went away. The people of Dokis began asking for schools that would really give them the new skills they needed. More and more Dokis people were leaving the reserve and going into the city in search of better schools and medical care and jobs. The reserve community was dying, but there might be a way to save it.
I was working some with the white people, and they used to tell me, you know, a road can be built. So that's what I put in my mind, like, why not try just a horse trail? Then we wouldn't maroon here. Finally, I got a little bit of money to make the bridge. Just a small wooden bridge with logs, you know.
The chief and the councillors have been trying to get the government to put in a road for us, but never got anywhere with it.
I was a chief in 1947, and Joe took my place in 53. So when Joe took over then we worked together then, see. So in 1955, the bulldozers came in then, and we knew then there'll be a road someday.
The band used $170,000 of its own money to build a hydroelectric power line and 14 miles of road to connect with Highway 64. Older children could go out to school by bus. Dokis people were able to do their own logging and move logs out in trucks that belonged to band members, rather than letting outsiders take all the profits. But the trees had been cut too fast. New trees had to be planted, and another source of income had to be found. Joe Dokis put the band in the tourist business, with its own marina and cabins. The road joined the straight world of money on the market with the seasonal round of work and play on the reserve. Now the reserve, by its own free will, was wide open to the flow of people and things and ideas from the outside. Dokis people could drive out for shopping. Crowds of friends came in for the Dokis picnic and fish fry. Dokis teams could travel to other towns for sports. When Chief Joe died, friends came from hundreds of miles away. Even after many years, and even after they've resigned from the band, Dokis people are often brought home to be buried in this graveyard in the forest. Usually everyone in the village is there, because Dokis people care about one another.
Amen.
The road and marina gave people a wider range of choices. Absent band members came back to Dokis to live.
I was fascinated when we were out here last night how much of a change there was made. The places that I used to play where I was brought up and the trails that I used to run down are all completely filled in with gravel and Matter of fact, when I used to go to school in the morning, I used to walk along these trails and pick blueberries along the way. And they're just not there anymore.
The road solved some problems, but it raised some new problems. Before the road came, you had to get along with your neighbor. Now you didn't need your neighbor so much. Dokis lost some of its feeling of togetherness. Politics became a little more formal and impersonal.
I remember years ago we had our lumber camps, and the men were together there again at the lumber camps or on a hunting trip. They spoke a lot more freely. They were right there face to face. You didn't wait for any special meeting. You're not really yourself at a meeting. You're in there for strictly business, and you're not going to let yourself go. Where I think business has been done in this reserve in a lot of cases just by sitting around a campfire, where this is all gone now because of the fast pace.
Since Father Bergeron died, well, all the missionaries that's been coming up here, none of them talks Indian language.
When I went to school I was in Spanish in a little town near, towards Blind River. Well, they forbid us to talk Indian because they said they wanted to know what we were talking about.
Do you speak Ojibwe to one another at home?
Oh, yes, all the time. We do between ourselves.
Especially when we don't want anyone else to understand.
Especially if the kids are all around there and we don't want them to know what we're talking about. Why, we just swing it around in Indian and then they don't understand it.
A lot of people, including ourselves, say, well, the Indian losing his culture and he's losing his old ways, which is true. We used to go hunting. One of my uncles would take a piece of meat, throw it in the fire, and this was supposed to be feeding his forefathers, which would bring him good luck again. But as a result, the younger generation would ridicule him, and it made him feel very uneasy, because I remember one time we were up in a bush and we were kind of low on smokes. My uncle took some tobacco and he said, look, he says, you better put some tobacco in the fire so it'll to feed your grandmother, he says, or your great-grandmother or something, And they said it'd bring us good luck. I said, I'm not worried about my grandmother. She's okay. I said, I'm the one that's got to smoke, not her. I mean, stuff like this would as I imagine, embarrass the older people. And they never try to teach us these traditions because they felt that we weren't interested at all, which we weren't, unfortunately.
In moving back and forth between the reserve and the cities, the people of Dokis have been educating themselves as businessmen and blue-collar and white-collar workers. Dokis band now has 250 members. Half of them live in the cities, but they still have strong feelings about the reserve. Terry and Pat Dokis are the first two members of the band to graduate from university.
When I got married, I moved out. I had to have a steady job, so I went out and worked in a sawmill. It's sort of scary out there, I think. This is how I felt. That it was a bit scary by you had your house payment to make, or your rent. You had your doctor bill to pay, and it was constant. There had to be money coming in constantly. You'd work all week, take home your check, buy a little bit of food, and go out and have a good time with it, And I never really did think of the future like I am now.
The people at Dokis live a free and independent life. Norman Dokis is game warden for the reserve. He also runs enterprises of his own, like this small sawmill. His brothers Walter and Lawrence are captains of lake ships for the Ontario Northland Railway. This ship is going into retirement at Dokis Bay, where it'll be a restaurant and museum on dry land. Ernest Restoule is a federal government employee.
I work for Department of Public Works on the French River at the Chaudière Dams. It's only about 2.5 miles from the village here. I got a couple of cabins of my own, which I rent to the tourists in the summertime, and a parking place for campers.
Tourists are friends as well as customers. The campfire is the place where hunters, fishermen, and guides exchange ideas about business, politics, and the ways of wild animals. Chief Leonard Dokis manages his own private tourist and trapping operations, while he pushes forward plans for public development enterprises that will bring jobs and profits to the whole band.
If we do develop a motel, that'll take another 2 or 3 people to operate. Then the museum will take a couple. And then there's repairs to all these things that are built, so there still has to have a labor force to keep them up.
I think it's for the good, and I think it's done my parents a lot of good and a lot of people here. And I think they're living much better today than they were the days that I can remember back.
It's just an all-around nice place to live. You don't see too many people at ulcers, or you don't see many people sitting out worrying. Whoever you meet on a road or whoever you talk to, it's always relaxed and carefree as can be.
Charles and Sharon, have you come here freely and without reservation to give yourselves to each other?
A wide network of friendship, kinship, and intermarriage links Dokis with the outside world. An Indian woman loses her Indian status when she marries a non-Indian. A white woman legally becomes an Indian when she marries into the band. The people of Dokis still feel close together in spite of all the changes. In their patterns of togetherness and in their patterns of private enterprise, they make a blend of European traditions and their own traditions. Dokis people have become quite like their neighbors in some ways, but they have their own identity, and they draw a feeling of being Indian from their roots in the land and their sense of wilderness and freedom. They give special attention to their legal Indian rights, like their right to net sturgeon. And they attach a lot of importance to such country-wide Indian symbols as the Plains Indian war bonnet and the Pacific Coast totem pole. They're proud of their independence.
At your command, I understand.
Some of them are looking for ways to salvage the older traditions and recapture their lost language. Other native groups might go by a different road. They don't have to pay as high a price as Dokis paid. Nowadays, many people want to have the children go to school in their own language and learn English as well. Many people want to leave the forest uncut as an everlasting resource. But whatever the people want, they need power to get there. Dokis found one way to gain power. This is the Dokis strategy. Guard the land. Choose good leaders. Stick together. Trade boldly and wisely. Get money in your own right. And make a clear, strong drive for what you want. That's how the Dokis people manage their world.